Aloha nui, Lily Makaila, planner with DHHL's Planning Office, here to present the overview presentation for this round of beneficiary consultations. This is for the update to the Hawaii Island Plan. We're currently on round 2 out of 3 of our beneficiary consultation series. DHHL has island plans for each of the islands that have DHHL land inventory on them. The primary purpose for island plans is to assess the land inventory and to make recommendations about land uses or future uses for that land inventory. For this plan, we'll be looking specifically at DHHL's land holdings on Hawaii Island. Island plans typically have a 20-year time frame or 20-year planning horizon. That doesn't mean that all the information in the plan is now useless after 20 years. It just means that every 20 years, the department knows that they need to relook at these plans and work with beneficiaries to update them and make them more relevant and include any information that might be missing, like for lands that were not previously included in the inventory, or to capture any changing priorities. Now, when I say identify land uses, most folks are familiar with zoning, county level zoning, state level zoning, even federal level zoning. DHHL has exclusive authority for its land uses or zoning on DHHL lands, and the zoning is referred to as land use designations, and these land use designations are captured and reflected in each of the island plans. Another major component of the island plan is to determine priorities. There are many different ways that you can determine priorities. One way is more so the kuleana of staff and the consultant team, and that is looking at the land holdings, assessing the available infrastructure around it, and determining how easy or how difficult will it be to develop this homestead, what would the potential cost be, is there water and other infrastructure available? And if not, how much effort would be needed to bring infrastructure into these areas? That's one way of determining priorities. You would look at how easy or how simple it would be to develop the homestead in each particular area, and then put it in order of easiest / quickest to most challenging or might take the most amount of time. Another way of determining priorities is for you beneficiaries to just plainly tell the department where you want your homestead to be. And that can be for residential, for agricultural, for pastoral. It's helpful to the department to hear from its beneficiaries and to hear where you would like to live. That helps us to understand what areas are your priorities. And it's also important, if you folks are interested in sharing things like lot size, what type of agriculture do you want, subsistence agriculture or supplemental agriculture, what types of farming are you looking at doing, what types of livestock are you looking at doing for pastoral areas, and even what you're looking for in your residential homesteads. So all of that information can be captured during these comment periods, and it helps us to determine the priority areas for development. And finally, these plans are really important for coordination. We capture all of this mana'o and we put it into the plan and we finalize it with beneficiary consultation and commission approval. But then this also goes to our land development division, and this is what helps them and guides them in their development of the homesteads. It helps them to understand what the priorities are, what the challenges and constraints are, and how to design the homesteads based on what you folks are looking at seeing. I wanted to talk about DHHL's planning system. At the top, you can see the general plan, most recently updated in 2022. You look at the general plan, it has the names of each of the land use designations captured in that plan, and it also includes some details, things like lot size or slope, or other guidance for what areas are suitable for homesteading uses, what types of land should be captured in each of the different land use designations. At Tier 2, you can see island plans. You can see that they're more regional, right? There's an island plan for each of the islands that have DHHL lands on it. And like the general plan, it's a 20-year time frame or 20-year planning horizon, meaning every 20 years we understand that these plans need to be relooked at with beneficiary consultation and updated. Now at Tier 3, you can see regional plans. Regional plans have a shorter time frame. Regional plans really focus in on homesteaders. They look at a specific region, they look at the existing homesteads, they identify priority projects based on beneficiaries' input and homesteaders' input. So regional plans really focus on people and homesteaders. Island plans really focus on land and land inventory. To learn more about the previous iterations of the plan, the last Hawaii Island plan was updated in 2002 for all of DHHL's land holdings. This was pretty unique though, because at that time, DHHL did not include its Kona lands. Those were not a part of the DHHL land inventory. Those were added on later. So there's also a 2009 West Hawaii Amendment, which includes land use designations and information just for the Kona moku. For the QR code on here, if you hover your camera app over it, it should give you a link to look at the last Hawaii Island plan. Also below it, there's information about the DHHL general plan. Again, last updated in 2022. If you hover over the QR code, it will take you to a version of that plan, which is on DHHL's website. Now, in this general plan update, there were some changes to land use designations. New designations were added, one designation was removed, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later. Schedule. This project kicked off in fall of 2023. Some of you folks might be curious as to why it takes so long to update the island plan. Hawaii Island Plan especially takes quite a bit of time, and that's because DHHL's land holdings statewide are about 200,000 acres. Almost 120,000 of those acres are on Hawaii Island alone. And part of this process is really looking at all of this land and using GIS spatial analysis and other tools to really get a firm understanding of what the land inventory is and to really take a look at it. For this process, we did spatial analysis at the quarter of an acre level. And so analysis for all 120,000 acres looked quarter of an acre by quarter of an acre. You can imagine that that takes quite a bit of time. For our beneficiary consultations, our first beneficiary consultation was back in August of 2024. We just completed round 2, which was April of 2025, and we're hoping to come out one more time to gather input, and that is in September or October of this year. We're hoping for September, but it really depends on how many comments we get in this comment period and how substantial our revisions will need to be. We'll be coming to the commission with the final plan and asking the commission to accept that plan. We're hoping to complete the final draft in January of 2026. Again, that is tentative based on kind of how substantial comments are both in this round and for the third round of beneficiary consultation expected this fall. Shows all of DHHL's land holdings on the island. The land use designations that are shown here in different colors are pulled from the 2002 and 2009 island plans. These are not the proposed land use designations. We'll be going through tract by tract, but this is a really interesting map. It lets you see all the different moku, where the lands are concentrated, and what types of land uses were designated in the previous iteration of the Hawaii Island Plan. Talking about land use designations is understanding what the land use designations are. I'm going to talk about these now. This slide and the following slide will focus on land use designations as updated in the 2022 general plan. I've broken them up into two different sections. This first section focuses on homestead uses. All of these 5 land use designations are homesteading uses, meaning the result of these lands will be 99-year homesteads. These are homestead lands that are awarded to applicants on the wait list and are used to create homesteads and homestead awards. The next category is going to talk about non-homestead uses, and those non-homestead uses do not create 99-year homestead lots. Only homestead uses create 99-year homestead lots or awards to our applicants on the wait list. Starting at the top in yellow, residential is pretty straightforward. These are residential lots and subdivisions. These are found in all of the different moku on Hawaii Island. Residential land use designations and awards pull from the residential wait list. The next two are agricultural. Subsistence agriculture in the light green, supplemental agriculture in the moderate green. Now, subsistence agriculture means small lot agriculture, no more than 3 acres. Supplemental agriculture means large lot agriculture up to 40 acres. Some of the criteria that are captured in the leases for these lands. For subsistence agriculture, it's a smaller lot. There is a requirement to cultivate, but there's no metric. You're not required to cultivate a certain portion of your lot. You also can put a residence or a house on a subsistence agricultural lot, but you are not required to. And therefore, in order to accept the award, you do not have to meet any specific financial requirements. You're also not expected to do commercial agriculture, and so you do not need to complete a farm plan or a business plan in order to accept a subsistence agriculture award. For supplemental agriculture, this is large lot agriculture intended to provide more opportunities for agricultural production. Supplemental agriculture does allow for homes to be built, does not require that a home be built, and so there are no financial requirements for supplemental agriculture in order to accept an award of this type. There are requirements for cultivation. For lands that are supplemental agricultural lots, you must cultivate 2/3. So if you receive a lot, you are expected to cultivate 2/3 of that lot. And because this is meant to provide opportunities for agricultural production, a farm plan or business plan is required in order to accept a supplemental agricultural award. For pastoral lands pull from the pastoral wait list. These are typically large lot agriculture specifically for pastoral use or for livestock use for livestock. And a ranch plan and fencing for pastoral lots is a part of the requirement. You may develop a home, but you are not required to develop a home, so there's no financial requirements outside of the ranch plan and fencing. Now, one of the new land use designations in this 2022 update is called DHHL Kuleana, not to be confused with Kuleana lots like Land Commission Awards or Kuleana lots from the Mahele. Now, DHHL Kuleana lots are describing raw, without infrastructure lots that are intended for off-grid subsistence lifestyles. This allows for more choices as to how lessees wish to develop their lots. Some of the requirements for DHHL Kuleana lots is that lessees must participate in the maintenance of the right-of-way to the Kuleana Homestead Tract. You may be wondering, what list does DHHL Kuleana land use designations pull from. DHHL Kuleana land use designations pull from either residential, agricultural, or pastoral. Currently, there are only 2 areas that are designated for DHHL Kuleana. The first one designated is Kahiki Nui on Maui. That area is very steep, very remote, and folks who live up there do live off-grid lifestyles. It's subsistence lifestyles in that area. And during the beneficiary consultation for the settlement plan and environmental assessment for that homestead, beneficiaries decided that it would be designated as DHHL Kuleana and would pull from the Maui pastoral waitlist. So it's designated DHHL Kuleana and it pulls from the pastoral waitlist. The other location that is designated DHHL Kuleana is on Hawai'i Island in Keaukaha Tract 2 or King's Landing. Now there are a mix of lots. It's the settlement plan in EA is not finalized. It will be DHHL Kuleana lots, but they will likely pull from a mix of the residential or agricultural or even the pastoral waitlist. That is still under development. On homesteading uses, these uses again do not produce 99-year homestead leases. They do not address the wait list, but they do serve other purposes. The top 2 in light blue, community use, and light pink, community agriculture, these are meant to address common areas. We do understand that a thriving and healthy homestead community is not just a collection of homestead lots. There are other types of needs, community spaces that should complement the homestead and help make a more thriving, more healthy homestead. Community use land, land use designated areas are things like parks, recreation spaces, areas for public facilities and other types of amenities. Also things like gathering spaces for the homestead, community centers. Community agriculture is a newer land use designation included in the 2022 update. These are common areas that are meant to complement homesteads and provide space for agriculture, both cultivation of produce as well as potentially for livestock like community pastures. Community agriculture, I think, is an important category that can be utilized or integrated into areas near our existing residential homesteads. We understand that the lot size of residential homesteads is typically pretty small. And so having space for community gardens, community agriculture can be really important in creating more opportunities for our homesteaders. The next 2 categories, red and purple, are commercial or industrial. These lands stay within DHHL's land management, specifically under the land management division. These are lands that are suitable for commercial or industrial types of activities. These lands generate revenue specifically for the DHHL Trust Fund. Examples of these lands are industrial spaces in Hilo, Kuhio Plaza, the Kauai High commercial and industrial area. So again, these are areas that are leased for commercial or industrial uses, and those lessees do not have a 99-year homestead lot. They are typically businesses that are paying an annual lease rent, and that lease rent is revenue that helps to feed the DHHL Trust. The next 2 categories, renewable energy and stewardship, these are newer land use categories. Renewable energy is lands that are suitable for renewable energy, not any one specific type. It could be for solar, it could be for wind, it could be for geothermal. There have been a lot of concerns that were expressed in the first round of beneficiary consultation about renewable energy. Most of the feedback that we received in round one asked not to designate certain areas in renewable energy, and so most of those areas were all removed from the track maps. If you folks have big feelings and concerns about renewable energy, this comment period is a great opportunity for you to express those concerns and express your concerns about renewable energy in or near the homesteading areas. Also, for the renewable energy category, if there are certain types of renewable energy that you are supportive of and you feel could be located in certain areas on DHHL's land inventory, please also share those comments. We are interested in hearing all comments and would like to use those comments to revise the proposed land use designations. Now, stewardship is renamed stewardship. It was previously called general agriculture. Now, general agriculture, I think, was a misleading title. Most folks assumed that general agricultural lands produce 99-year homestead lots because it's agriculture. And that is not the case. And so for that reason, the name was changed from general agriculture to stewardship. On Hawaii Island, there's over 37,000 acres previously captured as general agriculture, so not identified for homesteading use, but identified for other types of uses. Part of this plan is looking through all 37,000 acres and seeing how many of those acres can actually be dedicated to homestead uses. And of the areas that have too many challenges or too many constraints right now to be designated for homesteading uses, those are being identified for stewardship uses. And some of those constraints are things like challenges in accessing. Maybe there's no road access, safe road access for a homestead to be able to get there. It could also be that there's challenges with water or challenges with the development in some way. The last two, conservation and special district, these are areas, conservation is typically environmentally sensitive areas. These are lands, the Mauka lands, the mountain faces, the watersheds, areas that have critical habitats. These areas have more limited uses, but it is important that we don't assume that all conservation lands are not valuable or not usable lands. They're valuable in different ways and can even be revenue generating. There are lands in Humu'ula that could potentially be utilized for sustainable koa forestry. They have been used for sustainable koa forestry in the past as a source of revenue generation and can potentially be used for that in the future. So conservation doesn't mean that there's no potential for revenue generation or land uses that benefit the trust. It just means that they're environmentally sensitive. For special district, these are areas requiring special attention, and it can be because of hazard areas like a flood zone or a tsunami evacuation zone. It could be areas that need to be maintained as open spaces or greenways. For instance, in Honolulu, there's a large area that's identified in special district that's meant to be retention area for stormwater flooding. So it needs to be a big open area so that it can capture stormwater runoff to prevent flooding, impacts from flooding in the areas makai of the homestead. Also, if an area has a lot of cultural resources, that's another reason why it can be identified as special districts. For instance, the Kalai lands in Ka'u. So this is the review, the overview of the presentation. The next step, you can go through each slideshow presentation by Moku, and I'll be covering the land use designations with a quick recap and then going through the track maps and all the proposed land use designations. Mahalo.